Hey everyone, Cody Shirk here. I was gonna try and show you guys some crazy wildlife. I just saw a massive manta ray just jump out. There's some sea turtles. I saw another manatee back there a little while ago, but of course they're probably all hiding now that I'm filming. So I'm gonna make my way up the beach here because it's a little loud from the surging ocean, Atlantic Ocean. I am in South Florida. Not gonna tell you the exact beach because beaches should be left to your discovery, and I encourage you to explore the world and find hidden beaches because they're beautiful. Now, my original plan this morning was to get on a stand-up paddleboard and go way out to sea. I was gonna paddle maybe 3-4 miles offshore because I wanted to get next to a big container ship, because that's what I'm gonna talk about today. There's a container ship right out there, as you can see it. It's probably like 2.5 miles offshore. So I was gonna paddle out there, get kind of close to it, not too close, and talk about it. But there was a storm this morning. There was some offshore wind, and if you know anything about the ocean, you don't really want to be on a paddleboard out in the middle of the ocean as there's an offshore wind, because you will get swept out to sea. And I didn't feel like paddling for hours all day. So that's why I'm on the beach right now. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is the containerized freight index. And this may sound like one of the most boring topics you can possibly think of, but if you stick around, you'll understand why I'm really interested in this index, and also why you should be too. So about a month ago, I was in Costa Rica. I was hosting an event called the Explorer Summit. I host these events several times a year around the world. They are a small gathering, 20 to 30 people that gets together. We have a couple presentations from investors who are doing interesting things around the world, and then we have nice dinners, some drinks, and trade stories and swap tales about what we're up to. And one of the conversations was from a gentleman who is one of the largest exporters in the US. He knows the import-export market very well, and he made an offhanded comment to me where he said, you know, the cost to ship a container across an ocean has dramatically increased the past several months. And the last time this happened was just before COVID. And you know what happened when this cost increased? Inflation followed on. So I heard this conversation and my ears kind of perked up, and then I thought to myself, I didn't talk much more about it on that trip, but when I got home a couple weeks later, I started to research this. And lo and behold, he was right, not only about this cost increasing, but also about the trickle-down effects. So I'm gonna go up here a little bit, up the beach a little more. The general story is, if you look at the CFI, which is the Containerized Freight Index, it tracks the cost of, or what it takes to ship a container across an ocean. They take into account several different routes, different locations from point A to point B, and different carriers, and then they blend the cost out, and that's how they come up with this index. Just before the pandemic era, this index started to increase. And then within about a year or two, the index ended up increasing, let's say 400 or 500%. So we're talking about a 4 or 5x on the cost to ship goods from point A to point B. This cost directly affects the goods inside of containers. And if you think about a consumer in the United States, if Chinese goods are being made in China, shipped across an ocean to the United States, and then put on shelves, the consumer ends up eating a lot of these costs. So that's why we had a lot of inflation. As those shipping costs increased, so did the cost of goods. And right now, as I speak, this index, the CFI, Containerized Freight Index, is peaking. And I shouldn't even say it's peaking, it's increasing dramatically. In fact, it's increasing faster and more aggressively than it was several years ago. And there's no signs of it peaking right now. There's no plateau. It just looks like it's going up, up, up. It's one of those hockey stick charts that's super alarming. I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, so I will provide the link so you can look at these charts yourself and do your own exploration into this data, but it's pretty alarming. So then I started to look at inflation data and tried to compare the inflation data to these shipping costs. And in general, I noticed that it's 7 months that it takes for the inflation to hit after the shipping costs increase. And so if you're wondering, well, when is that? That should be around this fall. So fall of 2024 is when we should be seeing inflation heat up. That is if the CFI, the Containerized Freight Index, really is an indication of inflation. Again, I'll let you dive into this, and you should look at the link in this video about the article I wrote, because the data is pretty compelling. It's pretty alarming as well. So you can make your own judgment as to whether or not inflation is going to hit us. Okay, on to the investment opportunities. Clearly, if you think inflation is coming back, there's a lot of ways you can play that. Get yourself into assets that match the purchasing power, so gold, Bitcoin, other things like that. But there's a more obvious or maybe less obvious, but maybe more lucrative opportunity, and it's to get a hold of these shipping companies that are getting increased costs. These shipping companies, which I don't have any skin in the game on, so again, do your own due diligence, do your own research. These shipping companies are going to see their margins increase enormously. So if shipping costs increase 4 or 5x, shipping companies have their own costs, maintenance of the ship, crews, and then fuel, of course. But for the most part, their margins are going to increase dramatically as shipping costs increase. Yes, their fuel costs could go up, and they could, maybe double, triple their fees. But if shipping costs are going up 4 or 5 times, you can see that their margins are going to increase as well. So these shipping companies stand to make a lot of money. And if inflation and these shipping costs are going to be a little bit delayed, you have time right now to invest in this trend. And these shipping companies are going to announce their earnings, several quarters later. So again, we may not see how much money they're making for a little while. But here's another interesting thing about the shipping industry. It's one of the cheapest industries across all markets. So if you look at tech, real estate, pharmaceuticals, anything you can think of, the shipping industry is one of the cheapest industries in the world right now. And they're throwing off about a 10% dividend yield. So if you're holding on to shipping stocks right now, they're very cheap and they're throwing off a 10% yield. So how do you invest in this? Well, I have a couple ideas. There's an ETF called BOAT, B-O-A-T. This is not a recommendation. Do your own research. It holds about 40 different shipping companies. It's probably going to spread your risk across a lot there. I'm not personally invested there. There's several other companies you can dig into. What I would recommend is looking at shipping companies and looking for ones that are super cheap, very low debt, and that maybe are throwing off some yield. That could be an interesting way to play this trend. But we will see what happens in the coming months with this CFI, the Containerized Freight Index. I highly encourage you to check this out. The trend of this index is alarming, and the trickle-down effects it may have are going to impact not only our economy from the inflation side, but for investors, it could be a huge opportunity to position yourselves in these shipping stocks right now. All right, guys, I'm going to finish the rest of the walk in my super dorky hat. It looks overcast out here in Florida, but let me tell you what, it is hot. I feel like I'm swimming in the humidity, and I got to wear a full long sleeve and hat just to protect myself. Thanks for watching. See ya.